so much for that warm welcome. And I have to say, howdy. I love it. I teach 8 o'clock in the morning, and often those students are just not awake. And so if it's too slow, I just make them say howdy, and we say it until they wake up. So I don't think I have to do that here. It's a wonderful opportunity to see a lot of people I don't get to see and meet new people. So I'm delighted to speak to you today. I want to share a glimpse, and I say that on purpose, a glimpse of the history of both female students and female faculty at Texas A&M University. And bear with me, I have a lot of people to thank. It's so important to credit people for the work they do. So here it goes. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge historian Dr. Bonnie Ledbetter, who worked with me years ago in putting together the research for this history of women at Texas A&M. Early findings by Polly Westbrook and the Women in Communications Network aided that research. I also acknowledge Barbara Finley, Pam Matthews, Emily Mellick, and Carol Walther, who used our work and added to it. To Heidi Knippa, who wrote a thesis on the admission of women to Texas A&M. Thanks go to John Scroggs for helping with documenting the statistics of female faculty. I want to also thank the Commandant, General John Van Alstyne, and the Corps for help with research on the Corps of Cadets. Thanks go to Mary Broussard, David Chapman, Bill Page, Rebecca Hankins, Miguel Juarez for their help with records from our library. Some of the PowerPoint slides came from the Eagle, others from the Battalion, and others from Texas A&M University publications. I have to thank my husband, who always is out of town when I'm presenting. I wonder if I should think about that. But at any rate, I do want to thank my husband, Peter Tarlow, for his support and for making dinners several times when it was not his turn. It was really my turn. Thanks go to Brenda Bethman and her always cheerful brainstorming with Sarah Benderitis and me. Special thanks go to Senator Benderitis, who put to work several hours on the original PowerPoint, turning these ancient slides into PowerPoint. And then I would be remiss if I did not thank exceedingly or profusely Katie Elrod for enhancing the presentation and for operating the PowerPoint today, as I don't trust myself to talk and try to operate this 21st century technology at the same time. After all, I am part of the history of women at Texas A&M University. Let the history begin. Here is the old Agricultural and Mechanical College of Texas. This is pre-1963, when we changed our name and admitted women on a limited basis. According to Dr. Henry Detloff's History of Texas A&M University, the college, chartered in 1871, opened its doors in 1876 with a males-only policy, despite a Texas state government recommendation that the college, as it was called then, be co-educational. Throughout almost 100 years until open enrollment in 1970, I ask you to think special, think legal, and think economic. Special circumstances such as wars and the Great Depression and legal challenges, including response to civil rights legislation, will bring women to our school as special students, as will their being special by being related to professors of the college, such as Ethel Hudson. She was allowed to attend as the daughter of a professor. Here she is in 1895. She enrolled as a lecture student in 1893, attended classes for 2 years. She was credited with developing the first A&M yearbook called the Oleo, and Lisa Kalmus, one of our former graduate students, has a copy of that, which I want to see at some point. And Ethel Hudson was the illustrator. Here in that yearbook, she is recognized as being an honorary member of the class of 1895. These are her twin sisters, Sophie and Mary Hudson, who enrolled in civil engineering. They entered the university in 1899 at the age of 14. They completed all degree requirements, but they were given certificates of completion rather than degrees. Several professors' daughters attended in the early 20th century. One of these is Emma Fountain, who said, quote, "The boys were very nice to me and all the girls. The boys realized that there was no place else for us to go," end quote. She eventually got her courses from A&M transferred to the University of Texas, where she received her degree in 1907. Women did serve at the college as sponsors for the battalions and other clubs. So we have women, something happened with part of my speech here, but we have women sponsoring different the corps in the battalions, the different battalion sponsors. And we're going to move on to those two battalions, and so we have women here as sponsors of the corps. There would be several legal challenges to Texas A&M's all-male policy. In 1909, the Texas legislature required Texas A&M to allow women to attend summer sessions. Some women continued into regular classes as special students, again, relatives of faculty and staff. Note that in 1915, a wealthy donor, a Mrs. Clara Vanderloss, offered to endow a chair of domestic science at Texas A&M University. The board of directors rejected that offer, saying this would mean women would have to be admitted as regular students. Thus, we have in that year an official policy of excluding women from the university. During World War I, there was a shortage of male instructors, and some women were hired but not retained after the war. Wanda Farr, the wife of and unfortunately, we don't have a picture of Wanda Farr, but Wanda Farr is the wife of, we have more information of her. She was the wife of a biology professor who was appointed an acting instructor when her husband was drafted. The picture here and that's circled is of a Miss Niebert, and we know her name, but I don't have other information about her at this time. There were also some admissions of wives of returning veterans as more special students. This is a photo including the special students Estelle Tatum and Bernice Carter. Now I want to stress that the number of special students was still quite small. 21 in 1922 to the maximum number of 30 in 1925. Interestingly, there was even a woman on the board of directors. This is Mrs. J.C. George in 1922. So you see there's lots of history we still can write about. Dr. W.B. Bazell, president in the early 1920s, saw, quote, "no reason for not admitting a reasonable number of girls to this institution, especially the daughters of employees of the college," end quote. No doubt Bazell's attitude was influenced by his daughter Elaine, who entered A&M in 1922, and there she is, Elaine, in the middle of this photo of campus favorites. I love that picture. The first woman special student who was granted a degree was a woman by the name of Mary Evelyn Crawford. Crawford's on the right. Now this is very interesting. President Bazell granted her the degree, but she received it in private, off campus. But word got out, and the board of directors met, and they passed a policy that no girls were to be admitted. They had to change the policy because the state legislature had mandated that women be admitted to summer school. But at any rate, here's her diploma. Now, Mary Evelyn Crawford's name and graduation date, 1925, was to be memorized by corps members so that she would be remembered as the first and last woman to graduate from Texas A&M. So folks, we've come a far piece. Okay. In 1933, the severity of the Depression meant a 25% cut in professors' salaries, and there was once again the acceptance of A&M employees' daughters as special students during this economic emergency. Local citizens felt that they should also be able to send their daughters as well. The college said no, and so did the judge. During the war, some women were permitted to take classes in defense-related programs, and some women were permitted to teach due to the shortage, again, of faculty because of the war. It is in post-World War II America that there were a series of court cases against Texas A&M University, pushing the university to admit women. There were changes occurring. Summer school reopened and women returned. Ruby Bauer, private first class in the Women's Army Corps and wife of a vet medicine student, was the first female veteran to enroll on the GI Bill. The English department hired 6 women faculty members. We have a slide of Grace Fitzwilliam, a graduate of UT and one of the first female faculty in the English department. In 1953, State Senator William T. Moore, class of 1940, introduced a resolution mandating that A&M Board of Directors admit women. It first got accepted by a voice vote, but several days later, it was voted down. However, many knew it was only a matter of time before women would become a part of the student body. O.S. Gray, a 1917 graduate of Texas A&M, said so, quote, "A new generation will rise above tradition and prejudice, and in the dawn of a new day bring to pass those necessary things to ensure the future greatness of our beloved A&M." But according to a 1957 battalion survey, students were not yet ready for that time. Aggies say nix to co-ed. One student leader said, and we blew this up to make sure this is an accurate quote, and it is, "Co-education would make A&M like any other cookie-pushing school. It would ruin us," end quote. Still in that year, 1957, 212 women enrolled in summer school. The legal pursuit continued. Myrna Gray sought admission in 1958. She and 2 others joined the lawsuit for admission. Judge William T. McDonald, class of 1933, found on behalf of Gray, Bristol, and Tittle. We have the judge there, and then a Houston Chronicle cartoon responding to McDonald's decision. Some of the Aggie reactions were severe, and I warn you, the next one is pretty graphic. This is a slide of the judge being hung in effigy. McDonald's decision was eventually overturned, but the pressure to change continued nonetheless. These changes were necessary and helped by General Earl Rudder becoming president of Texas A&M in 1960. Mounting legal pressures were accompanied by economic realities, as fears of major economic losses also pushed the college to change its policy to some form of co-education. From 1952 to 1962, A&M grew only 29%, compared to the University of Texas, which grew 70%. Texas Tech, 117%, and North Texas State, 126%. The board feared that A&M might not continue to share that permanent university fund. These realities, plus some appointments of non-Aggies to the board of directors, led to an April 1963 decision of limited co-education at Texas A&M. Women were admitted into graduate programs and veterinary medicine as day students. Remember, there are no dorms yet for women. This is the direct quote. "The Agricultural and Mechanical College of Texas will accept on a day student basis the wives and daughters of faculty and staff, the wives of students in residence, and women staff members to the undergraduate programs." And that was in April of 1963. So we have girls, girls, girls. President Rudder endured chants of "we don't want to integrate," and they were talking about women, not African Americans, in this particular chant. The cadets booed Rudder. The protest continued, and Rudder continued his support. He's incredibly important to changing times for women. Continued his support for integrating women into the college. Remember, these changes are taking place in a national environment of change. We have a growing civil rights movement. We have an active women's movement. President Kennedy's Commission on the Status of Women is formed. The Equal Pay Act of 1963. The next year, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibited discrimination on the basis of sex as well as race. And so we have a change taking place. This is one of my favorite PowerPoints. Ladies replace men. Here's the restroom sign change with ladies replacing men. Notice it says ladies instead of women. Were they trying to tell the women at A&M something? Anyhow, I guess that's my own joke. Nobody ever laughs at it, but I think it's funny. There were so few women's restrooms that the university actually printed a guide, which I don't have, but a guide to ladies' restrooms on campus. I've heard this from several people, but I've never seen it. So if any of you have in your possession such a thing, I would love to see it. Still, listen to this statement. Sterling Evans, then chairman of the board, issued the following statement. This board has no plans for making A&M College an all-out coeducational institution, such as having special courses for women and dormitory facilities. His statement may well have been a response to the sizable protest against the new limited coeducational policy. One Dallas man withdrew a $1 million grant. A group of Houston businessmen withdrew a $250,000 gift for a new wing for the Student Center. Almost 2,000 freshmen withdrew applications. I quote from a former student of the class of 1957 who addressed his remarks most especially to Sterling Evans. Quote, "You of the class of 1921, president of this board of directors, have the dubious honor of not only being a former student, but also being president of the board which destroyed A&M College. In token of my complete dissatisfaction, I hereby surrender the A&M sign which symbolized the A&M that is no more. I hope thousands of other Aggies will do the same." And of course, he gave back his ring. Yet women began to come. We have some pictures of women in the shape of a question mark in that 1963 yearbook. We have a Bryan school teacher and wife of electrical engineering professor, Stella Haupt. And Francis Henry just told me that Stella Haupt, who received a master's degree in the College of Education in 1964, had a joint degree with her daughter and granddaughter. And I'm going to get that information from her after the talk. So I'm always encouraging you to give me more information. Okay. We have Sally Shepard, one of these early women, who entered in computer science. She earned her BS in mathematics in 1965, her MA in 1967. She got her PhD from the University of Pittsburgh in 1977 and returned to Texas A&M soon thereafter. In 1987, she was appointed associate provost, the first woman to hold that position. She became emeritus professor of computer science in 1998. Maureen Turk and Nancy Nielsen were the first to study nuclear engineering here. Nancy graduated in 1970 and Maureen Turk, now Mrs. Maureen Smith, in 1972. And the women kept coming, and so did the female professors. Dr. Betty Unterberger began her career, isn't that great hairstyle from Dr. Betty Unterberger began her career in 1968 as the first female full professor. She taught here for 36 years. The other picture, of course, is at her retirement party in May of 2004. By the way, the Women in Leadership Forum, which sponsored the original talk that I gave, just added to her many awards and gave her an award. During Betty Unterberger's long tenure at Texas A&M, where she was Regents Professor of History and the Patricia and Bookman Peters Professor of History. She contributed both publications and service to the field of American diplomatic history, and her awards are too numerous to mention. Her support of younger faculty and women in general are legendary. Her national service efforts are also important, from pushing for the Freedom of Information Act to positions on historical advisory committees for the State Department, the Department of the Army, the Department of the Navy, and still, she is, after her retirement, serving on the Historical Advisory Committee for the CIA. In fact, she has been on a national committee under every president since Carter, and she's changed the lives in both the classroom, the university, and the broader society. From this chronological look back, let's move from 1968 and this amazing first female professor, and remember another dedicated one, Ruth Shaffer, who was soon to follow Betty Unterberger in 1971 as the second full female professor, and she did so much work trying to integrate this society and trying to get A&M. When we talk about diversity now, you can't forget about those early efforts of Ruth Shaffer, which were extraordinary. She was a full professor in the Department of Sociology and, as I said, just worked tirelessly for not only recruiting more minority students and faculty, but trying to keep those that we were able to hire. Let's move back to students and those helping them in their quest to succeed at A&M. As early as 1965, President Rudder had been given authorization from the board of directors to admit women at his discretion. This has created admissions beyond the limitations of previous announcements. With women coming to the university, there were changes in the administration. I don't have a picture of the first dean of women, Patricia Self, but the one administrator I do have a picture of is Toby Reeves. But both of them served in this capacity to assist women. Patricia Self, who is not on the screen, but Patricia Self talked to the female students about everything from personal problems to housing to classes. She had a very small room on the third floor of Nagel Hall. When she moved to the academic building, she said that one of the members of the corps yelled, "You don't belong here," to which she retorted, "Mister, you don't belong here either." It was only a matter of time until the following policy would become the rule at Texas A&M University, and I quote, "Texas A&M University is a co-educational university admitting all qualified men and women to all academic studies on the same basis without regard to race, creed, color, or national origin." The date was February 1970. Okay, let's give it a hand. A flurry of changes followed. Research from the Africana collection at Texas A&M estimate about 100 African Americans registering at Texas A&M during those early years of open enrollment. Some of the females include Irene Lane, Betty Sue Hanks, Mel Pruitt, Laura Jackson, Florence Caldwell, Barbara Moore, Charles Marie Peterson, and Sonny Nash. Sonny Nash entered with a major in journalism in 1974 and graduated in 1977. A writer, years after her graduation, she has written an autobiography. I can't remember the name of it, Katie. Big Mama Don't Shop at Woolworths, which is one of her contributions. Mel Pruitt, longtime educator, fulfilled a lifelong dream with the dedication of the Brazos Valley African American Museum just last month, July 22nd. Irma Alvarado was class of 1970. Seems to be, and I qualify all of this as seems to be because there is, I'm constantly getting more information. Nope, you got that wrong. There was an earlier one, and I welcome being corrected, okay? At any rate, this is the first name that I have for the first known Hispanic woman to graduate from Texas A&M University with a bachelor's degree in secondary education. With women as full-time students, we needed dorm facilities. And so we have Kruger Hall being the first dorm that was created to house women. This was in 1972. Women also began to take on leadership roles. as evidenced by the election of Mary Hannock as vice president of the class of 1972. Now, 1972 was also important in terms of women's athletics. Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 prohibited sex discrimination in education programs, including athletics. This meant equal access, or the attempt to have equal access in terms of women's sports. 2 years later, a women's athletic program was established. We have here Aggie golfer Brenda Goldsmith. She came here on an athletic scholarship along with Linda Wolfman, who had a full athletic scholarship. Wolfman competed as part of the 1980 Olympic team and was inducted into the A&M Sports Hall of Fame. For volleyball, we have Joey Brazel, Texas A&M's first volleyball All-American, and she was All-American in both 1978 and 1979. Playing basketball for A&M from 1978 to 1980 are these, we think, the first African-American women. Number 12, Lola Baker, stands out in the photo, but it's Peggy Coate, number 31, who holds the record of 1,000 points and 500 rebounds. Sounds like a great record to me. Let's look at another change for female students at Texas A&M, and I can't say enough good things about our current commandant of the Corps. He is just really serious about integration into the Corps, diversity, women, and things have really changed with the Corps. 1974 was an important year, of course, when women were admitted to the Corps. Originally, women were not in uniform. The approximately 50 women were organized into an all-female unit, W1. Originally, female members were called Waggies as a term of derision. But the women embraced it, so it didn't work, so I guess it kind of wore off. I have a photo of Gail Sedbury, 1977, who was the first female African-American in the Corps, W1, the fall of '74. We also have a photo of women's drill team, and we think this is either 1977 or 1978. The women's drill team was created in 1975 as an alternative to the all-male fish drill team. Let's look at now some enrollment figures. Essentially the graph is showing the rapid increase of women enrolling at Texas A&M, and later I have a graph that shows more recent figures, but you can see the rise here. Along with those numbers came women who wanted a complete Texas A&M experience. Here is a campaign picture of Sarah Finley, who ran for senior yell leader in 1981. I still remember her campaign, as she was taking my women's history class at the time, and she was adamant that she wanted to be a yell leader, not a cheerleader. She thought cheerleaders were being exploited by their dress and treatment. She saw the yell leader as being the epitome of Aggie spirit. She didn't run as a woman. In fact, she said, quote, "I think the people who oppose me are trying to make a woman's issue of this. I'm not." She concluded, "I want to be a yell leader, and it happens that I'm a woman. That's my basic argument," end quote. While Sarah did not win that contest, nor I think in all the years I've been here, I don't think we've ever had a female yell leader. But again, other challenges would be more successful. Here we have a slide of Melanie Zencraft. Melanie Zencraft brought a class action suit against the university when she was refused admission into the band. I'd like to read from her January 23rd, 1979 letter to the battalion. I'm going to read it in totem. This past Tuesday, January 16th, A&M was represented at the governor's inauguration. The Ross Volunteers, the Aggie Band, and the Parsons Mounted Cavalry were all present and representing A&M. These organizations took pride in the fact that not only did they symbolize TAMU, but they represented a special fraction of the university, the Corps of Cadets. The only problem I can see with this type of representation is the fact that no women were present among the ranks of any of these organizations. The onlookers at the inauguration would not be aware without prior knowledge of A&M that women attend this university. And in bold, are women at Texas A&M University going to continue to take a back seat, end quote. The Zentgraf suit involved several elite corps organizations, including the band, the Ross Volunteers, the Parsons Mountain Cavalry, etc. The suit was publicized nationwide by Jack Anderson. The legal challenge lasted for 5 years and resulted in complete integration in corps organizations. I was at Melanie Zentgraf's graduation. I was there representing the history department. The new people get to do that. Where's Rebecca? I saw her walk in. It'll be your turn. It was 1980. I had just arrived 3 years earlier. I watched as Melanie extended her hand to then President Jarvis Miller. He didn't respond. She put her hand back. She extended it again. He didn't respond. Then graciously, she walked across the stage. I said to Peter Hubel, who was sitting next to me, "You know, Peter, I haven't been here very long, but that didn't seem to be a very Aggie thing to do." Well, at any rate, I don't know if this is a spurious correlation, but later that summer, Miller resigned from his position as president of the university. Again, maybe coincidental, maybe not. Changes continued. In 1983, Bonnie Krompatek became the first female appointed to a brigade-level post in the Corps. And then we had the challenge of women in the band. This photograph, as listed, is from the Eagle, and of Andrea Abbott of Houston on the left, Carol Rockwell of Corpus on the top right, and Jennifer Peeler of Ennis on the bottom right. Jorge Hernandez said that his girlfriend, Andrea Abbott, was nervous, but she and the other fish in the band performed well, and all the fears that adding women would, quote, ruin the band soon seemed forgotten when women simply increased the number of our fighting Texas Aggie band. The band director dismissed the rumor that one of the girls had dropped out. He said instead that they are motivated and they're determined to stick with it. They get treated just like the rest of the fish. Changes continued. The year after the first women joined the band, 2 women joined the Ross Volunteers. And in 1987, Mandy Schubert became Deputy Corps Commander, the second highest student leadership position, obviously, in the Corps. Integrated units became the new composition in the Corps in the 1990s. To date, W1 and Squadron 14 were disbanded, and the first 2 gender-integrated units, G1 and Squadron 9, were formed in 1990. We have a picture of Tricia Sexton commanding Squadron 9. One of my former students, and I'm not trying to just brag about my students, I've just been fortunate to teach some of the leaders that have come through this wonderful institution. This is another one of my former students, Brooke Leslie. She became student body president in 1994. Brooke also, and it's really hard because I know that both Sarah didn't want to be known as the first woman and Brooke didn't want to be known as the first woman, didn't want to campaign on that. They're still the first, and so they get stuck with that title. But certainly Brooke wanted to be remembered for her accomplishments, which I'm going to tell you about right now. She was gracious about all the attention she received as being this, breaking yet another barrier here at Texas A&M. When she left office, she had achieved 11 of her 13 goals of her platform. Of all the accomplishments, the 3 she considered most important were the book swap, the honor code, and the improvement of A&M's public image. She received the top student honor at graduation, the Brown Foundation Earl Rudder Memorial Outstanding Student Award. Of the many nomination letters, the most impressive was written by Earl Rudder's widow, Margaret Rudder, whom we sorely miss. It began, quote, "In the 24 years since the Brown Rudder Award was established, this is the first letter I have ever written in support of a student." So needless to say, she won that award. More female presidents and other student leaders followed. Lori Nickel in the center of the middle picture was elected president in 1998, and Amy McGee elected Speaker of the Student Senate in 1998. Skylar Hauser was elected student body president in 2001. Skylar There's another picture of Schuyler taking office in 2001. She was an industrial engineering major who also took a women's history course from me, and she modeled her program as a student version of 2020. Access to leadership positions have continued to open for women. In 1998, Tricia Morlock, a journalism major, became editor-in-chief of the Aggieland, and Mandy Cater served as the fall editor of the Battalion. That same year, 1998, Rosa Jolivet became A&M's second female national champion with the 400-meter hurdles. Women continue leadership positions in the Corps as well. Tony Butler was the first African-American CO of a co-ed company. Next, we have a photo of Cynthia Erickson, the first female member of both Ross Volunteers and the Parsons Mounted Cavalry. In 2002, Reba Villanueva became the first Hispanic Jewish female chaplain in the Corps. I really should get a picture of Reba. I'm working on all this. Currently, 9.2% of the 1,713 Corps of Cadets are women. There are no all-female units, and 20 of the 33 units are integrated. You have to understand that you need a certain major number to make integration work. So it's not that the other 13 don't want to be integrated, they just need the numbers to work out. Currently, several Corps women have leadership roles. For example, another student I've had the opportunity of teaching, Abby Bellitzer, and her roommate Ashley Timrick are bugle rank in the band. Abby, who became the first female bugler and is the commanding officer of her outfit, was also elected to the Ross Volunteers this year. Liz Vasick is a Corps operations officer, and Carol Noble is in command of a new Navy Marine outfit in the Corps. Combining students first with leadership, we have Susan Rudd Bailey. She graduated from Texas A&M in 1978, was in the first class of women at Texas A&M Medical School, and continued her service as a Board of Regents member in 2000. In 2000, she became the first female graduate to serve on the Board of Regents. Incidentally, I have some statistics on that you can look at, but incidentally, last spring's Phi Beta Kappa meeting, I discovered that 75% of the spring 2005's Phi Beta Kappas were female, and if we average the three classes, we're brand new with Phi Beta Kappa. We worked on it for years, and we finally got it through this last 3 years. At any rate, if you average all three classes, approximately 65% of those awarded Phi Beta Kappa are female. I'd also like to point out another aspect of women contributing to this university. Lucille Young, and are you here, Lucille? All right. Okay, I'm going to talk about Lucille. Stand up. There she is. Lucille Young was a young African-American woman who graduated from high school in 1962 and was determined not to take a job cleaning houses. In 1964, she approached Professor McLean, who said he would help her. He looked at a number of labs that had openings, but when he said Lucille was African American, suddenly those jobs disappeared. Finally, he contacted Dr. J.D. Smith in genetics. Dr. Smith said, sure, we'll hire her as a research technician. Frustrated by the previous disappearing jobs, she called Dr. Smith and said, I want you to meet me before you take that job away from me. He said, no, this is a real job. You come in. You are hired. Thus, she began a career here in 1964, first in genetics, then range science, and now at USDA, where she works to date. And again, Lucille, welcome. What about Sterling Evans' statement that there would be no women's courses? I'm going to ad-lib a little. When I got the call that I was going to be interviewed at Texas A&M for a job teaching women's history, I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts at the time, a little bit different from Texas A&M in 1977. And all my friends said, this isn't a real job. And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, they're not going to offer you. I mean, just in 1970, they finally had women in. They're almost going to offer you a job in women's history. I said, oh, okay. And at the time, I was divorced. I still am Jewish. I was divorced Jewish with a 6-year-old child, and all kind of the wrong things for coming here at that point. And I taught women's history. And so my one friend said, go as a practice interview. And I'll take care of Josh. That was my son. He's now 35. Been here a while. And you practice. Well, folks, any of the people here who are looking for job interviews, that's how to interview. I mean, you are so relaxed. You come, you figure it, So I was totally myself. The one thing I didn't do is I didn't read about the rivalry, because my new dress was orange. Now, they should never have hired me. They should never have hired me. But anyhow, the other thing is I'm very gullible. So they said to me, Sarah, Dr. Keith Bryant at the time said, well, when you come in, you have to ride co-pilot in the Davis airline plane. Because at the time, they didn't even have co-pilots. It was Mr. Davis or whatever, and you could sit co-pilot. And they told me that was a requirement. I was so gullible. They said, where would you like to sit? And I said, I have to sit co-pilot. And so, literally, they just thought that was hilarious when I came in and I told them the story. They figured, I don't know about this woman. But anyhow, I did get offered the job at the airport, which we never do now. And I almost fainted. I almost fainted because, I almost said, but I didn't. You mean this has been for real? But I didn't say that. I thought it, but okay. So I started teaching here, and I was hired to teach a course in women's history, and bless his heart, Dr. Bryant did not think we'd ever have a need for more than one course in women's history. So we put it in a number sequence that there couldn't be another number right after it. But anyhow, I got out of the syllabus, and I got this call, and the professor said, hello, I understand you're teaching a course on women's history, and one of my students wants to take this course. And I said, oh, that's good. And he said, well, I just have to find out, is this a real course? And I said, you mean a real course with real books and real exams? Yes, sir, this is a real course. But at any rate, you get the gist of the attitude. That was in 1979. Obviously, things have changed. I was on the task force for developing women's studies here in 1985. We only offered in 1985 4 courses in women's studies. Just this semester, last semester, 22 courses, including an internship and directed readings. And women's studies became an official minor. And we have Harriet Andreatis appointed the first program coordinator. We had an informal women's faculty network as early as the fall of 1980. It was coordinated through then Dean of Faculties, Dr. Clinton Phillips, and Dr. Elizabeth Cowan, assistant to the president. Among other goals, it was to help recruiting and interviewing activities for new faculty as requested by department heads, and to have a regular system of communication among women on campus. The network was informally organized, but it was during my presidencies in 1991-92 and 92-93 that we actually created bylaws, and we solidified it, and we began the ambitious programs that continue to flourish to date under the current able leadership of Dr. Linda Putnam. With the full support of then Dean of Faculties, Bill Perry, we began what has become a very active women's faculty network with goals that have become realities in a successful mentoring program and a commitment, and I can't stress this enough, a commitment to partner placement. In fact, currently we have Kama Willems, a full-time recruiting services coordinator of the Human Resources Management Services Dual Career Services. I copied that right from her card. Seriously, Cam is doing a great job. She works with dual career partners. Her efforts range from networking with hiring managers and hiring companies to career counseling, to resume writing, even to real estate. Cama's efforts, along with efforts of Dr. Karen Watson and Dr. Cindy Anderson, and department heads who now circulate vitae of partners, have helped Texas A&M enormously in recruiting and retaining superior faculty, administrators, and staff. We have some figures on female faculty here. Note that in 1973 there were 51 female faculty. 1977, 101, 1982, 132. By percentage, 1991 I have 17.97%, and in 2005, 27.65%. I talked to John Scroggs just last week. We don't have the final numbers of new hires, but so far he thinks it's going to be more than this, but we have 123 females listed as new faculty coming in this fall, along with 239 males. So we're really, as I say, we have a long way to go, or shall I say grow. In terms of administrators, Jane Stallings was the first female dean of the College of Education. Viola Flores came to A&M in 1982 and became the first Hispanic female full professor. She became interim vice president and CEO for A&M Galveston during 1996 and 97. And then we move on to the Board of Regents. In 1994, Mary Mann West became the first woman to be named president of the Board of Regents. Allison Leland, the first African-American regent appointed in 1991, and by the way, at the age of 32, she was the youngest ever appointed. And Guadalupe Rangel, the first Hispanic woman appointed to the board in 1994. It was 1998 when Janice Stout was the first woman to serve as dean and associate provost. And then we have Karen Watson. Words cannot say enough good things about this woman. She is Regents Professor of Electrical Engineering. She followed Janice and has been Dean of Faculties and Associate Provost, since 2002. Karen has advanced into increasing powers and positions of responsibility at Texas A&M. In 1991, she became the first woman in the College of Engineering to become a dean. First an assistant dean of the College of Engineering, and then in 1996 an associate dean. In addition to her numerous publications, she has won so many awards, including the Presidential Award for Excellence in Science, Mathematics, and Engineering. Science, Mathematics, and Engineering Mentoring, and presented by President Bill Clinton in 1997. A mentor, a fierce defender of fairness in academia. Those of us associated with Texas A&M are so fortunate to have Karen Watson as our Dean of Faculties. This next slide is of Brenda Bethma and Barbara Finley at the Women's Center. The Women's Center officially opened in 2001. Oh, I better hurry. The center provided a place to congregate and also served as a resource center, having many books and articles available for students' perusal. The center also sponsored many stimulating brown bag luncheons and offered a place to welcome faculty and students on several special occasions. Just last fall, the Gender Issues Education Services and the Women's Center merged to form the new Women's and Gender Equity Resource Center. That center focuses on education and advocacy on many areas, most particularly women's gender development, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender issues, sexual and relationship violence. And then we have the Aggie Women in Leadership. This program came into being in 2003, eagerly championed by Becky Gates, wife of our president, Bob Gates. This is a great program fostering leadership skills for our young women. Female students join in their freshman or sophomore year. Each woman is paired with a mentor who has shared interests, and they spend social time together. I've done this and will volunteer again next year. It's a great opportunity to help students adjust to college as well as contribute to their leadership paths. They actually have to attend certain sessions that will help them with their leadership in order to be certified for this program. And then there are the social occasions as well. And finally, we have the logo for our Growing Women's Studies program. As I mentioned earlier, we started at 4 courses and we moved to 22. It's currently competently led by Claudia Nelson, and Women's Studies has made its first, and I hope first of many, interdisciplinary appointments in Women's Studies, and it's been given to Dr. Joan Wolfe. And hopefully this position will, and the others to follow, will continue to strengthen the program and give it and Texas A&M University national visibility. I predict more changes are coming, and now, as the coffee lady says on Saturday Night Live, you can talk amongst yourselves, or you can ask me some questions, or you can share with me more of the history of women at Texas A&M. I thank you. Yes.